How's it going, guys? Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Phil Talk Sports Podcast. Myself and Nick Rice here with you today. We wanted Hank to come back for this episode. It was very hard to coordinate 3 people for another episode, but hopefully we have him on the show again soon. But the Super Bowl is in the books, and Nick, it looks like another team in your general area has a trophy to put in their case here.
Yeah, the first, we might bring it up throughout the show, was this guy about a year ago, starting the LA championship run with the title in 2020, whatever it was. It seemed like it spanned 3 years, that NBA season. And then, Of course, the Rams and the Dodgers, really, really cool stuff. And I got to tell you, like, of all the titles, this one was the most surprising. To me, coming into the year, I felt like the preseason expectations, like, hey, this team is for real, the Rams, was a little it seemed premature, but congrats to them for getting it done.
Yeah, LA Rams getting it done against the Bengals 23-20 in what was like, it was an entertaining game. There was points where the action kind of went down and then picked back up. There was never a point that you felt that you could like, I'll turn on something else, this is over or whatever. There was never really a point for that. And before this Super Bowl happened, I did an episode with my good friend Joey, who's a diehard Bengals fan, and he told, his side of the story about like the Bengals run on this. And I would have easily done the exact same thing if I knew any Rams fans, but the problem is I don't, because like the few people I might know would have been St. Louis fans, and that's a weird dynamic and everything. And now they're in LA and they have this trophy, and you said like the expectations might have surprised you, but this was kind of an all-in year. We talked about windows on the last episode. Like, they don't get it done this year, I don't know that it's going to happen. And there's still a lot of question marks on the Rams roster moving forward, which we'll talk about in a bit. So really, this was do or die, and they got it done. So on that level, you do have to commend them for going for broke, putting all their chips in the middle of the table, and it paid off for them. So to that, congrats on that for sure.
Yeah. A few things to touch on. The first was, like you mentioned, it's hard living near LA for me to see Rams fans of the likes of, the Bengal guy you brought on, where there wasn't a square inch of his body or his wall or his posters didn't have Bengal orange on it. I thought that was pretty cool. Secondly, like, now I think you'll start to see a few more Rams fans. This is speaking as a Charger guy.
Yeah.
It feels like there are a couple of cities where you see guys kind of quietly Rams fans, quietly Chargers fans, and if they win big, then all of a sudden everybody comes out and claims that they were there back in 2007 when Sam Bradford wasn't quite there yet. They were fans of the Rams back then. Sure you were. Second of all, I pounded the table before the game, and I'm so disappointed. Maybe you could have stopped me. That's what good friends do, Phil. You said that, I said the Rams would win by 5, put a couple bills on it and lost, man, because they only won by 3. So never betting again, man. But the Rams, to me, were matchup wise a great matchup for Cincinnati because of that D line, and of course how great they are at wide receiver with Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham. The story of the game was that Odell went down and the other guy stepped up. So this is your typical championship. And lastly, for the resilient Rams, the third string tight end, the next man up Rams, while you might not know a lot of the names like you did last year's Super Bowl, last year's Super Bowl to this year, the ratings went up 8%. So I think a lot of people love the storyline of the Bengals and the Rams. Nobody expected those two to be here. And I think a lot of people kind of draw into the NFL because those stories win a lot in this league.
Yeah, highest rated Super Bowl in 5 years. It had about 90 plus million on regular TV. And then when you add in the streaming services and stuff, I think it capped out at right around 112 million, which again is the highest Super Bowl in 5 years. And just so we don't gloss over it, you heard it here first, guys. Nick is never betting again until next season anyway. That's when that's right. But you just teed up like 3 of my talking points. So I'm going to go ahead and crush all 3 of these. You mentioned the Odell Beckham injury, right? And that's the big story of this game. And you mentioned how the guy stepped up. I felt the story of this game is, it looked like if Odell doesn't get hurt, they're gonna gradually pull away in this game. Then
and they clear the 5.
Yeah, and you clear by, and that's such an LA thing. Like we won, but there's probably more people in LA pissed they didn't get the spread than happy that they won the championship. That's just
right.
how California is, I think. But I think the big story there was when Odell went down, nobody did really step up. I mean, you had the bounce off the one receiver's hand from Notre Dame that got the the pick off of, and they have their third string tight end. What was his name? Bryce Hopkins had 4 catches in this game. He had 1 catch for 9 yards all regular season. So like just granted, just the guys they had to work with and everything. But I think the big story here was, all right, we're going to try and get to Cooper Kupp when we can, but one of these other guys is going to step up. And they continued to shut down Cooper Kupp, and these other guys didn't step up. And then it got to the point where, well, I guess we got to throw to Cooper whether he's open or not. And that's where they ended up turning around. I think for a good quarter and a half there, probably midway through the second through the midway through the third or something, like they were stalled out because they thought one of these guys would step up and they never really did. So I think that is definitely what kept the Bengals in this. Obviously, I think the story came out, Jalen Ramsey gave up more yards than any starting corner in the history of the Super Bowl, like 120 something yards to Jamar Chase and a few other guys.
Could have given up more.
And then this was very interesting with the big play at the beginning of the second half, right, where the big face mask that wasn't called. People are torching Ramsey as much as he got torched on the field and everything, but like I don't know that you could blame. I'll bring up Joey again. We were texting during the game, and I'm like, I think you'll admit that was a huge face mask. It's just nobody likes Ramsey, and that's the reason they're not calling. He's like, yeah, that's pretty blatant, and I do think it came down to like he's not the most likable guy anymore. A while, yeah, we don't mind letting that one go for it, but it was a 75-yard touchdown, so maybe they should have evened that back out. But I mean, with that injury, I do think they just hit a point where you've seen the meme about Burrow and Chase saying it, but I think at this point it was Stafford going, well, Cooper's open down there somewhere. I'm just going to throw it down to him. And I was watching the game with Kramer, actually. That's who I ended up hanging out with to watch the game. Nice. And as it was coming to a close and it looked like the Rams were going to pull it off, he's like, who's your MVP for the Rams? And I said, well, it can't be Stafford because he threw 2 picks. And nobody wins the MVP with multiple interceptions unless your name's Tom Brady. It's like the only time it's ever happened, right? So I'm like, I really think it had to be Cooper Kupp. And obviously there was a point to be made for Aaron Donald. And that would have been cool to see. But in a game this close, the guy that scored, your 2 touchdowns had to come down with it. I thought they did the right move with Cooper Kupp winning the MVP. And we'll talk about what this means for the Bengals next. But like I said, the Rams, I really do think they had their opportunity. Great story for Matthew Stafford. I'll end with this part. What Ram are you most happy for getting a ring this past Sunday?
My goodness, you hit all the talking points there, Phil. In terms of all the guys I'm happy, I'd probably go Cooper Kupp. I think that just the story is incredible, going from there was one video that surfaced after the championship and him winning MVP, which, just as a side note, I would give Cooper Kupp the MVP because even though Aaron Donald was dominant, I think Cooper Kupp, given the extra attention the defense had to give and the game-winning touchdown catch, all those to me weigh a little bit more than Aaron Donald, who you didn't really hear of during the first half of the game. That's
he came up big there at the very end, but yeah, I agree. I think Cooper had the most overall dominance on that game.
Right. I'm just happy for him because of where he came from. The video that surfaced after the Super Bowl was that there was a reporter through his senior year in high school asking him, what are your feelings about this being really the end of your football career? An incredibly bold statement by a guy who's clearly wrong. Yeah. He goes to Eastern Washington after that, and then Cooper Kupp becomes, in the most astonishing way, you couldn't tell me that anyone predicted this, him going into the NFL as a 3rd round pick, that he'd be this good. This is incredible stuff from Cooper Kupp, and I'm happy for him that he reaches the pinnacle of a title, and who knows what he can do next year. I mean, this is just an incredible progression for this guy.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to pick Cooper Kupp for this. I think we all, after what Matt Stafford went through in Detroit, a lot of people are happy for him. A guy like Cam Akers, I was a big fan of in college at Florida State. He has a big career ahead of him, so he has time didn't really put his imprint on this game, but he is a Super Bowl champion nonetheless. I'm going to go a little weird with this one. I think overall, when I'm watching all the players celebrate, the guy I was most happy for is Eric Weddle. because this is
Oh
the dude
yeah.
who just
You
had a
think I'd
great
choose that
career,
one?
who retired, had a great career, multiple Pro Bowls, all these things. And just, I think a lot of guys, when they retire, they hit the point where it's like they have to acknowledge that, all right, I didn't win the big one, still had a great career, and you learn to accept that over time. And, he was 2 years on the couch. This is a guy that played in a Super Bowl, I believe, with the Rams the years prior. But, yeah, to come out of retirement, to lead the team in tackles throughout the playoffs, had some sort of injury, has to get shoulder surgery now that his career is over, now that he's re-retired. But just
Yeah.
seeing him out on the field with his family, like, can you believe 3 months ago I was playing golf and now I'm, in the Super Bowl? Like, a lot of great players, but like, what a unique story from him. And, as the Charger fan that you are, I'm sure you have a lot of great Eric Weddle stories. Just a great teammate and a good captain. And there's a reason they reached out to him and not somebody else to help man that secondary for this run, I think.
Just a consummate professional. Eric Weddle is. I'll just repeat the story again for all hurt Chargers fans. It's the last game that he is a Charger. San Diego's playing at home against somebody. I think it was Miami, something like that. This was like 6-7 years ago.
Right.
And he decided, the consummate professional, he never does this. He's always available for pretty much every game. I don't know if he was perfect in that at the Chargers, but he rarely got hurt, rarely missed time. And he wanted to watch his daughter perform at halftime. The daughter was in some halftime dance at Qualcomm Stadium. And, the whole coaching staff and ownership was so mad, they released him right after the game, like right after. And Eric Weddle goes to Baltimore and then the Rams, and he proves. And after the Super Bowl, he talks, just openly about it. Like, hey, I think I proved that I got the last laugh. And I'm really happy for that guy that, he showed the Chargers, my favorite team, that, hey, this I'm a legit pro and you made a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, other than those kind of stories late in his Charger career, and I think when you're somewhere for 8-9 years, however long it might have been, maybe longer than that even, you might sour with some front office members, and that, that's just something that could happen. But as far as getting the last laugh, as much as I am a big fan of the guy, the Rams would like to think that they had the last laugh, but I do think us fans had the last laugh a couple days later when the Rams had their Super Bowl parade. I don't know if you've caught any of this. Just to put it into perspective here, let me see if I can pull this up. I'm getting better at this, I promise. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So, for example, this is I think it's up now, right? This is the Eagles Super Bowl parade from just a couple years ago, right? Borderline a million people throughout the 8-mile stretch of land, right? You ready to see the Rams one?
Oh, I've already seen it.
What is that, man? Like, we have a Christmas parade here in Edgewater that I feel like there's more people of. Like, this is embarrassing, man.
This is embarrassing.
Let me ask you this: did you go, or did you know any friends that went, or anything like that?
I know friends that went, and one of my friends got on a popular Rams parade vlog type of thing, and it's like he was bragging about it. And I'm like, look, that's nothing to brag about. Like, I'm sure the vlog caught literally every fan that went. Okay.
I was gonna say, statistically, like, he should have gotten on multiple blogs, because like the odds you're gonna get the same people. But like, man, when I saw that, and like there are years of like, like the Chiefs one was great. Like the Tampa one, it's hard to gauge because it was on the water, right? So you can't kind of ignore that one. But there's other years of, our crowd was bigger, blah, blah, blah. The Cubs, for example, was a little bit bigger than the Royals, speaking baseball a little bit. But like, this is easily the most disappointing parade ever, I would have to imagine, of any, like, when the Philadelphia Soul won the Arena Bowl, their parade looked a little bigger than that, from what I remember back in the day, man. Like,
well, and it was disappointing all the way around, because I'm sure you saw one woman operating a camera fell like 8 feet in just a random hole that opened up, and it broke her back. It's just incredible.
I think she fell off the stage of like a performance that was going on, and and then there, Matthew Stafford, the whole thing, like, where he kind of apparently he has come out and he's actually going to pay this woman's like medical bills, and like, I understand people being like, this guy was, kind of didn't handle this the best, but like, there are some people acting like he pushed her, like, he just like, there are two, if you're out and about, and let's call it what it is, he's at his Super Bowl parade, the guy's drunk as hell, right? Totally understandable. Like, when you see that, a part of you is going to be like, okay, I'm just gonna back off here and like let people like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
blame him a lot, but hey, you know what? He stepped up. He admitted that he didn't handle it
Mhm.
right, and he's gonna pay this woman's medical bill. So again, good for him for sure.
Yeah,
Any
I'd
more
say
closing thoughts on the Rams before we move over to what this means for Cincinnati?
Uh, I I got to tell you, this was probably and being as a Rams and a Charger LA guy just in general, I'm loving seeing the Rams win. Not quite the Chargers, but
Yeah,
I love seeing the Rams win. I got to tell you, I think that the Rams are going to quickly be one of those teams that enjoy great Super Bowl success and then just become another team in the next couple of years because a lot of the guys that they have there are old, expiring contracts. A lot of them are talking about retirement. I'm amazed how many are
yeah.
talking retirement. That to me tells me that very quickly this team will become just another club. I mean, Andrew Whitworth is one, Von Miller, Aaron Donald, a lot of guys you'll see either wearing new
Sean McVay
uniforms
has
for a
even
year.
hinted at it.
It,
This
it
six
that is amazing.
coach.
So to me, I think the Rams aren't going about the first couple, yes, granted, first couple days, but they're not going about the start of the offseason in most, championship fashion. So I
I
think
agree.
this was their pinnacle moment.
This will be a Super Bowl hangover to top them all, I think, because the guys that they will be missing, and then not to mention, young guys like McVay and Aaron Donald. I say only, but he's 8 years into the league. This will be his ninth.
Yeah,
I do think he comes back, but the fact that he's already
me
having
too.
that mindset has something to say. And then
Mhm.
Odell Beckham, that was a torn ACL. They're lucky if they get him back for the playoffs next year. They're going to play the whole season without him for the most part, I would imagine. Um, so yeah, a lot of question marks for them, and probably about the same amount for Cincinnati. A very good showing by them. Like I said, when
Yep.
Odell was still in the game, I got the vibe that they're going to gradually pull away from this game. Like Cincinnati's going to battle them tough. And then when Odell got hurt and Joe Mixon throws the trick touchdown, by the way, only the fifth non-quarterback to throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl is Joe Mixon. So
A
very
quick
elite.
side note, I got to ask before we move on to this.
Yeah.
How was that the exact replica of the Philly special, or was it a little different?
No. So all they did was like a pitch out to Mixon, and he stayed wide so that they'd collapse on him, and then he threw the ball over. There wasn't an initial direct snap and then a pitch off to somebody else. It was just a pitch, and that's really the most basic of halfback passes. I think the way they handled that. So no, not the same general idea. Obviously, he didn't throw back to the quarterback. That'd be the other major difference. But
Yeah.
but still, Joe Mixon, one of only 5 non-quarterbacks to throw a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He joins the likes of, you mentioned the Philly special of Trey Burton, Antoine Randall L for the Steelers, and the other two, when I went to look it up, they're very older, like in the early days of the Super Bowl. And this is just back when, you're running triple options and stuff. So as far as players of note, it would have been those 3. So yeah, very unique company. They get the trick pass, and it's like, okay, here we go. The pass after halftime, which we talked about, could have been a face mask, ended up not calling it. They were in every position to succeed. And my biggest question in this game is in the fourth quarter when everything shook out the way it did. Joe Mixon, I don't know if he was banged up or what have you. The Rams running game was non-existent. Mixon actually had a decent day, 72 yards on the ground, averaging just under 5 yards a carry. Had a decent day, and they had P. Ryan in for basically that last, drive, and he got stuffed on the 3rd and 1. They go for it on 4th. Mixon's getting tackled by Aaron Donald, and he throws it to P. Ryan. It was all, not a spiral, nothing. Was still kind of a catchable ball, kind of an awkward exchange at the end of that game. But like, that was my one thought for that final drive. It's like, why is Mixon not in the game? Maybe he catches that like random flip pass from Burrow and they at least get the first down. They,
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen next. You could have huddled to the line and spiked it and continued on. You only needed a field goal to go to overtime or whatever. So a lot closer than, it's funny with LA teams, like this will be remembered as like this dominant victory that it definitely was not. So the Bengals,
Definitely not.
if you're a Bengals fan, I think you should be proud of your team. Obviously, for a team that hasn't been there in a long time, I haven't seen a lot of toxic Twitter things. So, shout out to Bengal Nation for that. Just very proud of their team. A lot of good guys. You talk about people leaving. This is not a team that has a lot of that. So they will be at full strength. I think the biggest issue is, when they start back next year, they're getting back on the starting lineup with teams like Kansas City and Buffalo. And while they were able to sidestep Buffalo and stun Kansas City, it's very hard. It's going to be very hard to do that again. But at least, I don't know if they're the favorites in the AFC, but they've put everybody on notice at least.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to social media, I don't know if you saw this, but there's a lot of trash talk about Eli Apple. Okay. Bengals cornerback.
Yes.
So
that is the one guy. Yeah.
There's the one. I have not seen so many pictures of burnt toast in my life.
Mhm.
So when it comes to Cincinnati, I thought going into the game, and we talked about it with Hank during the pre-Super Bowl podcast, that the difference between Sean McVay as a head coach and Zach Taylor as a head coach is massive. The winning percentage for Zach Taylor is 34% after this incredible season. So I thought that was the biggest surprise to me, that the gap between the two coaches I felt was not that big. And of course, the Samaje Perine decision to keep him in during that last drive that you mentioned is somewhat questionable, but I did realize after the game, he was technically their third down back throughout a lot of the year in 2 minutes. But you'd love to see Mixon in there.
Well, did you have that thought? Were you like, where's Mixon here in the most important drive?
Yeah, me too. Right. Me too. And then you go, wow, Aaron Donald pulled him down with one hand. So you forget about it quickly.
That's true.
Yeah.
I will say, to jump on what you're saying there, like, we all know Sean McVay is the better coach, right? I don't think anyone's going to argue that fact. Yeah. I do think Zach Taylor coached a better game. Like, he had the trick pass that worked.
Absolutely. That's where I was going.
Sean McVay ran he had 43 yards all day between all 5-6 people that he had running the ball, including the 7-yard run by Cooper Kupp on the 4th down. That was really I think that was their biggest run of the night. So he was I understand not abandoning the run completely, and they didn't even run the ball a whole lot, but there was a lot of wasted first downs just running into the pile. And I don't think he called a great game. I don't know if it came down to not wanting to get in his head too much, right? Just, I'll play the chips as they fall, let my clearly more talented defense get the win, and it worked out. But I will say, I think Taylor coached a better game overall.
Yeah, that was where I was going. I felt that Sean McVay was obnoxiously committed to the run. It got ridiculous. Like in the second half, you could hear every other run. The commentators like, "What are you doing?" And it's not too often that Chris Collinsworth goes away from here is a guy to, hey, look at this coach. He doesn't say that very much. So I just found it amazing to me. And if I'm going to be honest, I think Sean McVay really avoided a pretty bad Super Bowl tag where his offenses crumbled, because if Cooper Kupp on that jet sweep gets tackled, and he was close, it wound up being a nice 6-7 yard run, but it was close to being a turnover on downs there. Bengals have the ball in field goal range up 3 with about 2 minutes left. I think he was that close from being tagged 2 times in a row as a guy who overthinks the room in the Super Bowl against the team in Cincinnati, where his defense was giving him every stop. Yeah. And Aaron Donald was having one of those Aaron Donald games.
Yeah. And then if that holding, call deep in the red zone there, which I understand the ticky-tackness of that, right? I maybe don't call it based on, when you're a referee, you set the precedent of we're going to let you play a little bit.
Yep.
And I feel like they set that precedent and then reeled it in late in the game, which is not how you handle that. I think if anything, you do it the other way around. You call the little things to be like, we're not going to let you get away with that. And then late in the game, if, something like that, could I have gone without that call? Yes, but I'm not going to point to that and be like, that's why the Bengals lost, because they had the ball with 40 seconds left on midfield. They could kick field goal, gone to overtime. They could have beat Ramsey over the top one more time. It did not affect their ability to win that game. They still had a chance to win the game.
I think the only, and you and me were talking about it too, I think the only reason why we aren't as upset about that, because I'm with you, I think you call that less later in the game, and they didn't call it at the beginning. The precedent was set. But because that face mask penalty was not called, it almost felt like a makeup. And I hate makeup calls. Me too. But I think I'm a little bit more, accepting of that, given that situation.
I see your thought process there, but to me, if you're going to make up the call, you kind of got to do it on the next drive. You don't wait till that moment to, oh yeah, I owe you one. I agree. The whole concept of a makeup call, if it's not immediate, that's not a makeup call. You see in basketball all the time, you get some that's not a foul call, and then the next time down the court they call for the other team. That's a makeup call, but not like, oh, you got this random foul in the second quarter, and then you're going for the game-winning shot and you missed, but they call a foul, so you go to the free throw line. Like that's kind of the basketball equivalent of what this would have been, I think. But other random question for you, and not everybody is going to have an opinion on this. Some people, they got friends over, maybe they got music playing, whatever. What did you think of the commentary for the night? Because this, if you're not aware, could very well be Al Michaels' last game on NBC. So
it already is Michelle Tafoya's.
Her as well, yes. What'd you think of the commentary overall?
I watched with just some friends at home. I was going to watch a Buffalo Wild Wings, but you got to be there like 4 hours.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's why we watched at home as well.
Yeah. So, I think Al Michaels did, of course, a solid job as usual. For both of us being broadcaster folks, we are familiar with, the whole game and everything. Mike Tirico would probably take over for Al Michaels, most likely. I'm not trying to start any.
I mean, he was there at the end of the game to toss it over to the Olympic coverage, so he still made his presence known on the game.
Of the commentary, I was a little surprised that during the pregame he hints like, come in one last time, Chris Collinsworth, before they get started, and then at the end, I think he brought up one little thing. But I feel like if you're gonna say something, then at the end of the game, you guys should have just a minute of just reflecting on things. I just felt like that was a missed opportunity.
So I feel like I don't think Michaels is happy about this at all, because Collinsworth mentioned at the end, he's like, oh, not bad for your last go around, huh? And he basically just gave him a, yeah, we'll see. And like, that was like the last word that got said. So yeah, I don't know the details.
That's right.
I don't know the business insight on this. And like you said, you much more than me, but we're both in the broadcaster space. So it might be something that we listen to a little more than others. Mm-hmm. But the last couple of years, and I take it back to the Eagles Super Bowl, and this gets talked about a lot amongst Eagle fans. The words I would use is low energy. Like the low energy give of the last several Super Bowls dating back to the Eagles one, the ones that have been on NBC. Like if you go back and listen to the Philly special call of this exact broadcast group, like it would have sounded like it was just like a throw to the flat. Like it's just like, they snap it to Burton. Oh, to Foles,
touchdown.
And that's it. And I'm like, and then if you go back and listen to the official radio call for NBC, that guy loses his goddamn mind. And it's like, and like, I understand it wouldn't be the same as like going to listen to Merrill Reese and the Eagles broadcast, right? But you want a level that, this is why Gus Johnson should just call every big sporting event ever, I think, because that guy's going to give you energy if nothing else. So maybe when they kind of split up and it's Tirico and Collinsworth, maybe like they'll have something to prove. It'll be rejuvenated. Maybe Al Michaels, I think the rumor is he's going to go to Amazon and do every Thursday night game. So like that's a rumor that's out there. I don't know how true that is. So who knows? Maybe it's they'll both have little chips on their shoulder. They'll have something to prove. But I would describe the past several Super Bowls with this broadcast team as low energy. Doesn't mean they don't get the point across. They don't give you the information you need. But it does seem, and I don't know, maybe if I was broadcasting for 25 years, I'd be low energy at that point too. So I'm not really trying to dunk on the guys, but just from where I sit, to me, like I said, Gus Johnson is the gold standard of like high energy announcers, right? So maybe just a tick in that direction would be nice, but that is something I noticed throughout the game. So I was curious on, with you being in the space as well, how you felt about it.
Yeah, just to bring it home, like with the big broadcast teams on CBS, Fox, and NBC, and even on NFL Network when they do occasional games and the other stuff like that, it is, I've almost never seen this where a play-by-play guy just takes weeks off. And so Mike Tirico came in a few times. So you'll see that when a network has two games in a week, like, hey, you get one, you get the other. Joe Buck is insane. He'll do two the same week. Like, hey, I got Thursday and Monday and the Sunday regular game. And then
I'll go call the World Series in between, that dude is, as much as people don't like Joe Buck, the guy's a freak of nature and his work ethic is like next level for sure.
For sure. So I just found that curious, and now it's making a little more sense to me. Maybe Al Michaels isn't the happiest guy in the room. It felt like Al Michaels was devastated after that Steelers Cardinals Super Bowl. My best friend is leaving, John Madden.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't feel like that now. It feels like, like they couldn't wait for this year to end.
Yeah, I don't know if it's one of those like, could Collinsworth have done more to help keep Michaels? It could be a situation like that. Like I could draw a lot of similarities. I won't put you through this, but like this has happened in wrestling over the years. Like Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler are like peak wrestling commentators. And then Michael Cole comes in and Taz and other guys, and like they had to shuffle because they felt they needed to change. And like both guys kind of lost their fire for it because they didn't have their perfect partner, especially when the perfect partner still works for the company and still calls. Yeah, it's one thing if a guy retires, you accept it, right? But if like if me and you were the best commentary team ever and we both still call games, but we can't call them together because of business, like that would probably wear on both of us after a while, I would imagine.
For sure.
So it's just being human at the end of the day. I respect all these guys. And like people dunk on Collinsworth a lot. For the most part, I enjoy what he brings to the game. Like it's easy to make fun of it. Now here's a guy, and I'm the first one to do it. But like, guess what? You know who he is because of that. Those 3-4 words are the reason the average football fan can tell when it's Collinsworth calling a game or not.
Yeah. One extra thing. It seems like we keep adding an extra point, but I did also find it curious that Michelle Tafoya's replacement was doing the game with her. NBC almost always only has one sideline reporter, and there's two. So just the dynamics are crazy.
I took that as like a passing of the torch kind of moment, maybe is the way I would look at that.
Potentially. But us cynics here at Phil Talk Sports, is there an extra layer of conspiracy here? So,
and then you mentioned, the Michaels thing is up in the air, but with Tafoya, to my knowledge, and this will be the last point, did she get a moment to reflect on air? Like I didn't catch that either. If that
I did, yeah, I don't.
So
know.
that is something that should have definitely happened because no matter what, this was her last game. We knew that when the season started, I believe. So yeah, it would have been nice to give her that moment, if nothing else. But it is what it is. Something we didn't get to talk. Actually, okay. So before we even get to this, closing points of the Super Bowl, like overall, good game, not great game. I think we can agree. Highest rated game in 5 years, like I said, 112 million. Overall good game for a unsuspecting, this is not the matchup anybody thought. And for what we got great things. We got, LA is now cemented as a football city again, which is what the NFL's always wanted. And topped off and finished off with the worst Super Bowl parade of all time. I'll leave it there.
Well, one thing we gotta add, Joe Burrow is that dude.
Absolutely.
He is legit. All right. He is already top 5, maybe even top 3 quarterback in the NFL. To be that close against that defense, getting sacked 7 times, messing up your either ankle or knee midway through the second half. He is that dude. And if he had 2 more seconds on that final play before on the 4th and 1 where he throws just a prayer that almost was right at the running back's hands, which is also amazing.
Oh yeah, it hit him in the hands.
Jamar Chase torches Jalen Ramsey for the millionth time, by the way. Torches him for a touchdown as Ramsey falls down. I think Burrow hits him. They win the game. They're walking off as Super Bowl champs that nobody saw coming. So Joe Burrow is already top 5, top 3, right up there in the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Count.
And for the people that are out there that are like, what if they didn't draft Jamar Chase and they drafted one of the top linemen in last year's draft? Because they all did fairly well this year for the rookies.
Penei Sewell, yep.
Yeah, so someone like that, they're like, oh, would that have made a difference? And I'm like, well, no, because then he wouldn't have the most dynamic rookie receiver ever to throw to. Like, if you had
I think they made the right choice.
No, of course they did, because let's say you get him, right, and he's the perfect offensive lineman. If you owned a warehouse and you had 4 doors and you only locked one of them, that's not going to prevent someone from breaking into your warehouse.
That's right.
One good offensive lineman doesn't make up for the 3 other average at best linemen that the Bengals tend to have. So, like, I just wanted to throw that in there, that's a terrible way to look at this. Now, if you go out and make a couple free agent acquisitions the way the Chiefs did after the Bucs lost to the Super Bowl, right? They tried to revamp that offensive line. That is clearly the way to go for them. So we'll see if they do it that way. You mentioned Joe Burrow being a top 5 quarterback, potentially higher than that. I'm comfortable putting him like right at 5 because I want to see him do it again. Not like he's got to make it to the Super Bowl, but just another great year with a lot of good wins and see him go up. However, it's a little bit easier to get in that top 5 range because of the top 5 guy that is no longer on that list. And we didn't really talk about this pre-Super Bowl, so we'll talk about it now. As it looks, I'm still not fully committed to this yet, but it appears Tom Brady has officially retired from the NFL. So the floor is yours, Nick. What was your thought of how it went down, the kind of false start on the announcement, and then it does appear that a couple days later he confirmed that he is no longer in the NFL. So
just everything about it makes me feel like he's not done, from the league lead in passing yards and completions throughout the season, or from the fact that the Buccaneers were right there to beat the eventual Super Bowl champion Rams, to him being announced retired when he had no say on it. And then Tom Brady, fourth reason why I think he might not, be retired for long, is that even though he posted a bunch of stuff on Instagram saying it was a fun ride, he didn't technically say it either. So I think
he never used the word retire.
Right. He just said it was fun while it lasted, was something like that, something to that effect. I think all those things together, like, for as great as Tom Brady is and as calculated as he is, there's just no way that his final swan song is like that. So I'm convinced, especially because one of the big benchmark age numbers that he wanted to hit. Now he's been kind of crazy saying I'm going to play until I'm 55 or something like that.
Well, but 45 had been the number for a while.
45 was the number, and this would be his 45 season if he plays next year. I think he's one more year to go. I think he just got really frustrated by the loose culture, how different it is from Tampa. But I'm like, he went there for a reason. This just feels way too weird to me.
My one thought, and this we did talk about when we were speculating if he was going to retire, the people that were like, oh, you can't go out like that. You can't go out in the divisional loss. I'm like, well, if he wanted to go out on a Super Bowl, he could have went out last year. Exactly. So I don't feel bad for that reason. And maybe it's as simple as Matthew Stafford can't be the one that ends my career. That can't be something that history preserves. He could feel that way too. But for the people that are out here like, oh, he'll go to the Niners, or he'll go to the Vegas, or he'll go to Miami even because he'll just retire down, even closer to the water or whatever. The thing is, guys, the Bucks still have his contract. So he's either playing for the Bucks or he's got to convince the Bucks to trade him. So I don't like a lot of this talk. I think too much time has been spent on talk about who will Brady play for next. In my opinion, it's Bucks or nobody, right? Like, I don't see the Bucks have no incentive to trade Brady, because nobody's giving up a first-round pick for a year, right? Like, what are they going to get for him? A fifth rounder, maybe, right? Like, it's crazy to think, dude, with the value of Tom Brady, but in the sense that he's only going to play another year at most, right? So it's the Bucks or nobody, and you're hearing stories about the Bucks are in the running for guys like Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, so maybe they've moved on. But it was definitely a weird way to go about it, because the story broke. And then Brady came out and was like, hey, I never said that. I never said I was retiring. And then the media was like, well, Tom, are you retiring? And he's like, yeah, I think so. It's like, why did he have to go about it that way? Like, maybe it didn't happen the way you wanted to happen. And I also don't feel bad about that, because it's very simple here. If you don't want something broken in the media, don't tell people in the media what you want to break yourself. I think that's very simple that we can all understand. Right. Mm-hmm. So for the people that are like, you owe Tom Brady an apology, it's like, he told media outlets this, or someone very close to his camp. Now, if that guy messed up and he's out of the Brady circle, okay, maybe. But like, what are you waiting on too? That's my other question. Like, if you know this, like, let it be known. Like, what's the point of holding on to it? So percentage, there's like a 15 to 20% chance he comes back, right? I don't put it any higher than that.
I think it's a little bit higher when you also add some of these other factors too. That division, I think, is getting worse, and the conference is getting worse. The Saints, without Sean Payton, I think they take a step back. Matt Rule, I like him as a coach, former Baylor guy, but he was in the second half of this year pretty underwhelming. And then you have the Atlanta Falcons, who are just about ready for a quarterback change, I would assume. And then in the NFC, Aaron Rodgers might be going to a new team for next season. We'll see. But
Russell Wilson might as well.
Yeah. Russell Wilson, and just some of the NFC powers, including the Super Bowl champions, I think take a step back. I think this is the conference still for the taking for Tom Brady. I don't think that he can go out quite like he did, leading the league in yards, throwing the tying touchdown against the eventual Super Bowl champions. And I got to tell you, I think that there's almost, it's hard to say because he did technically, hint that, you know what, I'm probably retired.
Yeah.
And he put that tag on it. He said, I could come back, but I think I'm probably going to stay retired. I'd put it like 60-40 that he retires, 40 he comes back.
Okay.
But I just got this gut feeling, man. I don't think he's going to go out like that.
So it does appear he's got his hands in a lot of pots now. He's starting businesses. I think he's got a winery, things like that, right? So
rumor he might be a minority owner of the Dolphins.
That was the other thing, right? So it could be one of those deals where I'll come play for a year and then get ownership, right? Like, I don't think a lot of people know this, but the owner of the Yankees is basically the reason the Rays exist because Steinbrenner was basically like, whatever new team comes in is going to be in our division. So where do I want to go to road games 15 times a year, right? I want to go to, if I'm going to go somewhere, I'm going to go to Florida. So he's the reason that there's a team in Florida, basically. So it could be one of those, like, if I do have to play, I'll go to Miami and I'm going to, end with a ownership thing. Like, I think we can go about this for a while. So I think we'll plug it here because we're either going to hear something soon or we won't, and we'll be able to react from there. So yeah, Miami's possibility, but again, you got to get a trade from the Bucks for this to happen. That is the big thing about that. And what is the value of a 1-year quarterback? And it's one thing if you're a quarterback away, like the Niners, maybe I could see that being the case. They
how much you got to give up for him too.
yeah, exactly. And obviously the Rams are good because they're going to roll with Stafford for a while, and there's a lot of other, like, the Dolphins aren't a quarterback away. It would just be that weird year. It'd be like the Favre New York Jets year, right? It's like, oh, remember that random year where they won 9 games and didn't amount to much, right? It would be a lot like that. We'll talk one more football related thing. This is semi breaking news. This happened today. We're moving over to college football at this point, but it has come out that the college football playoff will stay at 4 teams for the duration of the current contract, which is up to 2025, I believe, is how long that one goes. Yep. Not super. I mean, we can give our thoughts real quick, but I'm not super shocked about this. I think one, that gives them a chance to really figure out what they want to do and not have to piece something together for this year or next. So I'm not super shocked about this, but at least we don't have to, when they first announced that they're looking at 12-team playoff or whatever, they made it sound like they were way more ahead of it than they were. So this is them kind of having to admit that they jumped the gun a little bit. I don't hate this. Now we know, and we don't have to speculate for the next 3 years. So that's the positive. The negative is you already talked about expansion. You got a lot of people's hopes up, but now they got to wait minimum of the next, 3 seasons at least.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. I think it wasn't that they don't want to expand. It's just, and as a college football fan, you're a little bummed. Like, man, for the next couple of years, a lot of conference champions, a lot of teams with one loss won't be able to sneak in there and compete against, a club that went unbeaten or whatever, and, represent a conference. Like Pac-12 is almost never in, a lot of the other conferences that seem to never get a shot. So with the college football playoff, I think you're right. It was more so, how can we work the logistics with the NLI about, all right, players are now potentially going to be playing 1 or 2 more games. When can we schedule these extra, quarterfinal matchups? Who are the buys going to be and stuff like that? And is every school on board? So when you think about it, man, that's a big logistical situation. And like you said, it's just frustrating that they brought it out, but I think they're doing the right thing in terms of getting all their T's crossed and their I's dotted and make sure that it's fair for everybody. And that's a crazy, we can have a conversation later on, whether or not it'll be fair if, there's more buys, if maybe we eliminate conference titles or maybe have one less non-conference game. A lot of crazy stuff you got to figure out.
The only other thing I would throw in there is, if I was in that room, my big thing would be, why don't we wait till this merry-go-round of conference realignment finally ends? And then we know where all these teams are, and then we can really, decide, do we need to do more or the other? But I think at this point, that's where this is going to stay. I think we're going to get a lot of shifting in the next 2 to 3 years. Then this comes up, and then they'll change it. It's easy to dunk on the committee and everything, but I think this is actually what they did wrong was announce it the way this is happening right away. And what they did right at this point is no, we're going to pull back and get this right, like you were saying. So I think that's really all that to be known about it at this point.
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was great to see Cincinnati in there. And like we brought up in previous playoffs, they did just about as good as some and even better than others
Right.
in the college football playoff. There's a lot of blowouts in that semifinal round.
Yeah, what a year for Cincinnati sports, right? The Bearcats make the playoff, the Bengals win the AFC.
That's
Like,
true.
I'm a little
That's
hyped for what the Reds are going to do once baseball does get going, if it gets going at this rate. Jesus,
right.
with that strikeout. But we
Mhm.
won't really have a lot of football to talk about until the draft
What's
time. So
that?
we're gonna
Free
end this
agency, I
on,
guess.
yeah, free agency and the draft and all that, which will come up quicker than we realize. But while we kind of transition away from football for a little bit, we're going to end today's episode on the big NBA story out there. It's been a long time since we've had a trade deadline move that really like made everybody crazy. And we had that with Brooklyn and Philadelphia trading disgruntled teammates to each other for James Harden and Ben Simmons, with what I think is, for some people, the lost move here is that Steph Curry going from the Sixers, Seth Curry. I always do that. Seth
Yeah.
Curry going from the Sixers to the Nets. So like I'll give you the floor first. How big of a trade is this? Who do you think got the better end of it?
I like Drummond too. He's off to Brooklyn and he adds some extra size for them. But I like Philly more. I believe they were the ones that gave up the 2 first-round picks
Yep.
to get James Harden. But I like that move for Daryl Morey and the Sixers because you get a guy that can space the floor alongside Joel Embiid and can create offense. I think that's a huge pickup for them. And, I think Vegas agrees because their title odds went up pretty significantly with that trade. And I got to tell you, like, okay, you can say what you want about like adding Seth Curry and whatnot to Brooklyn. You add size with Drummond, you get picks for the future. Those all sound great. But Philadelphia traded a guy who wasn't playing for a guy that's a perennial all-star. I'd say that no matter what ancillary parts you add on to it, you improved pretty significantly. And I get it, he's older, but he's also a guy that's say what you want about his off the court stuff. He'll go to clubs after a playoff series loss, and he's not the easiest teammate to deal with, but the guy works hard and the guy wins quite a few games. And I'd say he's going to be a pretty big addition for them.
I agree. I think when you look at like what the Nets got besides the centerpiece, right, Curry and Drummond, that might even help them more than Simmons if and when Simmons plays. It looks like he will, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But for if Harden plays like an all-star, it does. But this is one of those rare trades that's going to benefit both sides,
Yeah,
which doesn't
yeah.
always happen, I think. And the thing with Ben Simmons, he's already been on the sideline, which he has not been for the Sixers all year. Kind of, you got to tread lightly when you talk mental health, but like there's a lot of people out there. I might be one of them that feels that he's kind of hidden behind the shield of mental health because you can't even bring yourself to come to the facility and practice, and 2 days later you're on the sideline for the Nets. So I think it's pretty obvious what's going on here. It's not easy for people to want to say, but I think using mental health as a way to get out of Dodge is not the route I would see more players taking. I think like weirdly the way Harden got out of Houston, where he just like ate himself into like unplayable, that's almost more looked upon better than what Ben Simmons did. And like maybe, if he plays right after the All-Star break, I think we all know what's up there, where it's like, no, it wasn't a mental health thing. And like I think in this era of player empowerment, if you just said, no, I don't want to play there anymore, I don't feel appreciated, like you could have just, that could have been your hill to die on and people would have understood
Yeah.
it more. I think I don't want to say faking because I don't doubt it affected his mental health a little bit, but to put it at the level you did, to where 2 days later you are, on the sideline of your new team, just not a good look. I think I'll leave it at that for Ben Simmons. But like, he's a decent player. Even if he doesn't shoot, he's a great defender. He can still benefit the Nets in some way. So I will end this part of it of just like, this is a rare trade where I do think both teams got better in different ways. And if for no other reason, addition by subtraction, you got rid of a guy that didn't want to be there. And both teams can say that.
Which is amazing to me because I think we can agree, say what you want about Doc Rivers blowing huge leads. is he a coach that you would say top 5? I'd like to play for that guy.
Mhm.
Seth Curry's a guy I think you'd love to play with. I'm thinking of some of the other Philadelphia guys. A
That's
lot
his
of them
son-in-law
young.
too, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's right. And it
Yeah.
goes into all the other crazy stuff about him and Doc Rivers too. And,
Mhm.
and then Joel Embiid, there's a lot of worse teammates to play with than Joel Embiid. So to me, it makes, like you said, mental health a bad rap.
Yeah.
Like it creates this negative talking point and notion of mental health. I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot long stick. Ben Simmons, I think, can torpedo a locker room. He is that bad for you. When you're not showing up to practice, when things aren't that bad. And I also heard this too. He didn't play the tail end of that LSU season when they missed the tournament, even though he's a world star athlete. So from start to finish, this is a guy I would trade. I would get rid of half my team if I can get rid of him in the locker room. He's, to me, that bad of a team chemistry guy.
Yeah, somewhat of a Sixers fan. I was more bummed about losing Curry than the gaining of Harden, but hopefully it all works out. If Embiid doesn't get injured down this stretch, the MVP's in sight, because I think that's the only thing that stopped him from winning it last year is he kind of broke down towards the end of the regular season. So maybe that'll be a positive for them. And with the Nets, like you said, Simmons could torpedo a locker room, and this is a locker room that already has Kyrie Irving in it. So it does not make it hard to torpedo. That button's a little bigger in that locker room than it is in other places, I think.
Absolutely.
But we covered a lot today. I want to touch on one thing as we get out of here. I want to start doing this whenever I have Nick on, which is, more often than not. What as far as sporting events wise, what are you getting into this weekend, Nick? What games will you be at and be calling?
Well, I was at, and I wanted to create, we were talking about it off the air about a vlog of the Pro Bowl, because I went with my pops over there. But the game was pretty disappointing. And the whole get up into it too was a little bit of a letdown. So the next sporting event for me, I'm going to be working a lot of San Diego State gigs, and we'll see when's the next time I'll be swinging over there, potentially when the new Snapdragon Stadium gets finalized and whenever they have their spring game. I'd love to see the football team, the San Diego State football team. That might be the next move for me to go watch them at Snapdragon.
So while the Aztecs start on the road, once they start playing at home for baseball and softball, Nick will be there. I actually have the opportunity to do some Bethune-Cookman baseball in the lead into the Tortugas later this year. And
Very cool.
I'm wrapping up the Stetson basketball season here too. So for those, while everything's kind of touch and go with the Major League Baseball right now, we will celebrate. You guys might not hear this till Saturday, but we're recording this on Friday, which is opening day for the college baseball season. So while the billionaires might be having some stuff to argue, we're still going to get some baseball. Hope everybody enjoys some games this weekend. Play ball. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.